All right. So if we could start off with your name and where you're from.
Yeah, Matt Kempson, and I'm currently out of Asbury Park, New Jersey.
Yes. So previously West Coast Kempson, now you're East Coast or West Coast. So how would you prefer us to distinguish you two Kempsons, because people still seem to be mixing them up?
Oh, Matt Davis over at Obstacle Racing Media has for a long time referred to us as the pretty Kempson and the ugly Kempson. And then he started calling me the pudgy Kempson or chubby Kempson. And now he just goes with fat. He goes, oh, the fat Kempson's competing down or so-and-so this weekend. And I mean, it's definitely a little bit over the line, but I mean, my name's Matt. That works too,
He's a lot of things, but PC isn't always one of them,
I appreciate that though.
So real quick on your brother, thoughts on him not being able to flip the tire in Jacksonville? Because I know you're the strong Kempson and he's a quick one. So
that's created a lot of source of tension between me and him for sure. Just because we hold each other very accountable, and for things, we don't really sugarcoat stuff. And I mean, he should have been able to do it. And he knows he messed up, and he's working on that moving forward. But he put himself in a position to have an opportunity to win the race, which is really all you can have. Stuff should happen sometimes.
Yeah.
And I would have been more disappointed if he had not put himself in a position to potentially win the race. So I think it's cool that the race was decided on a tire flip. And what's interesting about it too is if you look, like, VJ Jones got the tire we'll call it relatively quickly, right? Within, I don't know, a minute or so. And it took someone like David Magida even longer than VJ to flip it. So that means that it wasn't a pure strength, thing. It was, I wasn't there, so I don't know if it was more technique or just sort of a mental, competitiveness.
Sounds like it was
or
wet.
Grit. Yeah, damp. It was damp, but it wasn't muddy. And it was definitely, there wasn't a lot of room to get I know my brother's technique is usually that he'll get down on the ground, he'll stick his hand. So if that's the tire right there, he'll literally shove his hand underneath there and jam his fingers in there to do it. And he just said he couldn't get that on the return flip. And I don't know exactly how VJ, some people are calling VJ out for using a towel or something. I mean, I watched the video. His towel was the size of a napkin, and he did one little swipe in one spot. I'm like, first of all, it's not illegal. There's nothing in the rules that says you can't do that. And two, that actually giving him an advantage, I find that extremely hard to believe. So, people can pipe down about that.
He also said that if he had been wearing a shirt, it would have had the same function. And that's a good point. He raced shirtless and he just had a little towel. If he had left the towel there, then there would be something in the rules where he's not allowed to do it, but he took the towel with him, so he's good. Yeah.
Totally. Yeah, nobody can really gripe about that.
Yeah. One of our patron supporters, Mark DePlustis, wrote in and had a couple questions. Who is the favorite child, and who would win in a fight between you two?
Oof, there've been a lot of fights over the years. We grew up very violent relationship between me and him from square one. Maybe violence not the right word, but I've been knocked out by my brother more times than anybody else, and probably vice versa. And it's I mean, you need at least two hands to count the amount of times that's happened. So, who would win in a fight? I'm bigger. I'm way bigger. I'm way stronger right now. But the thing about my brother is anytime we've ever he fights to the death. And I mean that very, it's it's the reason why you're scared of a raccoon or a squirrel that stands up to you. Cause that even though you're 100 times the size of that critter's willing to die before it loses in battle against you. And my brother's the same way. It's not if I get in a fight with him, it's not going to be this gentlemanly casual type thing. It's going to be a fight to the death. Yep. So, and you can never, small animals are dangerous when it comes down to that. So I'll leave it at that.
Definitely. And then who is the favorite child, I guess?
Favorite child? Ryan likes to think that I'm the favorite child, but I think when it really comes down to the end of the day, he gets the special attention for sure.
Yeah. That's
He
funny.
plays it off. He plays it off like he's the misfit, and I'm the favorite child. But like he used to run away from home and stuff when he was younger, to get attention. So he'd make it seem like he was like the misfit one, but he was a favorite child for sure.
Yeah, it's funny how you talk about how your brother's like super. He'll fight to the death, because I remember Bracken and his show, The Running Public, has been very vocal with. He's probably one of the scariest ones to race against, because he is either going to go all out and win or go all out and just die out there. Like he just goes, and I think that's what happened with the tire flip too. But enough about your brother though. How have you been since the last time that we talked? It's been like about a year now.
Yeah, I'm good. I think the last time we chatted was sometime in the beginning of quarantine.
Yeah.
That was a fun time. I miss those times. We were out in our Boulder house, just like, now all of us were like basically suspended from work, so had all day to just hang around and play Magic cards and train and do whatever we were doing at that point. That was a good time. But since then, lots happened. I moved about 6 months ago cross country from Colorado back to Jersey, which is where all my family is. Growing up, my roots were always kind of between New Jersey and Vermont. And I've been here for about last 6 months, living in Asbury Park, getting some really good training in. The world's still a crazy place, so kind of sitting tight and riding it out. Trying to have as much fun as I can until then. I've sort of transitioned from being high rocks and stadium race based to throwing all my chips in on the tactical games. And a big part of that transition was because there just weren't, I couldn't rely on the high rocks events going off. I spent 3 months in the fall, going all in on training for the High Rocks World Championships out in Berlin, or they went from Berlin to Amsterdam to wherever.
Yeah.
And it got postponed, and it got we weren't allowed to go. So that's really frustrating. And I've been wanting to get into this tactical games event for a while. And I looked at their track record. They hadn't canceled a single event all year, despite, any kind of COVID stuff. And even up to the last event I was in down in Texas a couple of weeks ago, they put the event on less than a week after that big snowstorm hit.
Wow.
Texas. So, these guys that was like life changing for some people. And there was never even a question that they were going to suspend this event. They didn't skip a beat. So I really appreciate that kind of, follow through. And because if I'm going to be training and busting my body up to train for an event, I want some follow through on the other end to know that event's actually going to happen, and I know with Spartan Race, there's been a lot of questionable call making on that. And I get there's shit going on in the world that's out of people's control, and it's up to, local government and US government. But they were saying up to a couple of days ago that they're going to put the Big Bear event on.
Exactly.
And like anybody who's been out in California for last year knows that ain't going to happen.
No.
Like, that's a little sketchy to tell people that you're putting on events when Florida, of course, events going to go off there.
Yes.
Without bar something catastrophic, Texas, of course, events going to go off there. But to say you're going to have an event in a state like California, no, that's not going to happen. So
what bothered me most about that too is they weren't. I was hearing some quote saying 100% sure it's happening, and one, nothing is 100% sure, and second, damn straight that's not 100%. Like no one really expected that event to happen, and then without word of cancellation, we're like maybe, but then it got canceled. Everyone's like, it's not that surprising, right? But
no, the only Spartan event that I'm probably going to get after this year, and I actually wasn't really planning on doing anything. I was going to do the stadium races, but I feel like the last thing that's going to come back, right? And I love those events, and I'll definitely be into that when they come back, but not if it's like a 50-50 shot type thing. But they just announced a few months ago that they're going to do the Ultra World Championship in Telluride, Colorado.
Yep.
Which is, I've never done an ultra race before. I've run pretty long distance. Beasts have always been a very good event for me. But especially with the kind of weight that I'm in right now, it doesn't exactly line up with things. But Telluride is my favorite place, hands down, in the entire world. Really? I love it. And when I saw that happen, it was just like, it was one of those things, you've got you make decisions athletically that make sense for your, your career, sponsor, whatever, payout wise. And then there's other decisions you make just because like they come from your heart. And that's one of those that I'm like, I'll regret it forever if I don't do that event. So I think I'm going to I'll probably have to do a beast up in the Northeast here at some point to qualify.
Yeah.
Because to qualify for the ultra, do you know what
everything that I thought I knew has been thrown out the window, so now I'm not too sure
Yeah.
anymore. But
I know at the very least you have to do a beast, and I'm assuming you have to finish in a certain. I think basically I'll probably do Vermont. That's a race I've always loved over the years.
I figured,
and then
you must love this place a lot if because it was previously going to be in Killington, and I know that you live very close to Killington, and I know that was like a good playground for you guys. So you think it's gonna be even better than the Killington venue, huh?
Telluride's unreal. I don't know if you've ever been.
I know
out
nothing
there,
about it now.
It's this box canyon down in Southwest Colorado. It's nearly impossible to get to. It's like 8 hours from Denver, and there's only one way in, one way out. And it's the town you get across town by taking a gondola that runs up until midnight. It's just like, it's the coolest place ever. Unreal views, super high altitude. The town itself is like 8,000 or 9,000 feet, I believe, base elevation, and then gets up to 13 high. If they send you up to the top, which that would be kind of absurd. I doubt they'll do that, but it's a cool place, and I'm looking forward to that.
That sounds awesome. Yeah, I've always wanted to go to Colorado. That's one of the few states that I've never been, and everyone and their moms is like moving over there, and it sounds like an awesome place to be.
If you go one place in Colorado, go to Telluride.
Good to know.
Don't pretend I didn't say that though, because I don't want everybody to know that.
That's fair. So you mentioned it previously, but the big reason why I wanted to have you on the podcast is I think you've been a really good ambassador for the tactical games. I honestly wasn't very familiar with it at all until I saw all your posts with it, and it sounds really awesome. It looks like a weird kind of cousin to OCR where it's fitness, but like a subsection of like real specific with it. Yeah. So tell me about how you found tactical games and what it's all about.
So, I mean, how I found it was, I saw it through social media over the last 2-3 years or so, people posting about it, but I had no connection, right? I didn't know anybody who had done it. And they had videos kind of highlights events, but you still couldn't really tell what exactly it was all about. Wasn't even sure if I was like allowed to do it. Like could someone who's a civilian and not military or whatever, or not law enforcement do it? And then it was last summer, I was having a barbecue and Rob Killian came by after, and he was just coming back from the Atlanta event and that he did for tactical games. He did a few last year, and he was telling me all about it. He's like, no, man, you can sign up. And I'm asking, like, well, what kind of gear do I need at this point? Because there's a lot of kind of intricacies with that. It's like with anything, it's very intimidating to look at from afar, but once you're actually in it, you're like, okay, this is actually a very welcoming community, and it's not that scary. So he kind of sold me on wanting to do one, and I went. You can't just jump in and go like do an elite race, right?
Okay.
You have to. There's a certain kind of progression you have to go through, and unless you have qualifications, right? Unless you have a military background and you can prove that you're physically fit. So I did they call it a skirmish event, which is like the equivalent almost of like a Spartan workout tour, maybe.
Okay.
It's like a 1-day event instead of a 2-day event. And I did that down in North Carolina, and I actually won, given there's it's a local thing, it's not a whole ton of competition. But that really, put a fire under my ass at like, okay, I do think I can really compete at this and do well. So I put together a schedule, and I did 3 events this spring. My 4th will be down in Utah. And, I set a goal that I wanted to get on the podium as soon as possible and get as much experience as I can. And then the goal for the year was to get on the podium at the national championship, which is be down in Texas later in November.
Nice. And is that going to be the same venue as the venue you were just at in Texas, or?
No, there's like 3 different venues in Texas.
I can see that.
It's a big state.
Yeah.
And they are having one other event there this summer that I might try to go to just to get some practice at the event that'll hold the championship, because the events are very different from one to the next, because there's different guys who are running it, who I guess call them like race directors. There's different race directors for each venue that will program things differently. And to give you a little background on what it actually is like physical wise, how it relates to OCR, the guy who started it, this guy Tim, I believe he has a military background, and he was also big in the CrossFit world, not like famous CrossFit, but just like really into CrossFit. And so its roots are very CrossFit based. So just think of a combination of competitive shooting and CrossFit, right? And then it's sort of morphed into more obstacle racing, I don't say friendly, but like. So I mean, there's been a few events. The event down in Atlanta, it was literally, they had trying to think of who it was. They had some local OCR company actually come and set up an obstacle course, and it was like
Green Beret or one of those.
Yes, I think it was Green Beret. Yeah. So Green Beret Challenge set up a course for them, and one of the you have in a weekend of events, they call them battles. A term I try not to use because I try not to make it too. I treat it as a very professional sport, right? So I try not to make anything that makes it too like hardo military focused or whatever. But anyways, so you have 8 events over a weekend, 8 workouts over a weekend, we'll call them. Down in Atlanta, one of them was a 2-hour AMRAP of this obstacle course. So it's like how many times you can go through this obstacle course in 2 hours. Rob Killian was there, so he obviously completely demolished everybody at that. And then in the championship this past year, which was down in Florida, they had an obstacle course in there. They had a traverse wall. They had monkey bars. I mean, it's like there's some events that you're like, this is OCR, right?
Yeah.
They had at the event, first event I went to this year, they had so you had to do some really long range shooting. It was like 45 shots at 300 yards. And then you drop your rifle and have to go run a 5K that goes like through some buildings. They have walls in there. It was literally like a Spartan race, right? Like a low key Spartan race after some shooting. So there's a lot of transition there. But I would say if you took of the 8 workouts over the weekend, 2 are very shooting based, 2 are a little bit more obstacle course racing and endurance based. You know, the runs are usually between 2 miles, 4 miles. They've had 12-mile rucks before, right? So it could be anywhere. And then I would say 4 of those workouts are very CrossFitting. So we're talking about and not necessarily like barbell like cleans, but they'll have an axle bar and you'll have to do like an overhead walk, or you'll have to do a Zercher carry, or you'll have to do farmer's carries, sled drags, sandbag over bar. So not technical movements. There's no Olympic lifting in there. But they do have barbells, and someone who is good at CrossFit would do very well at a lot of the events in this.
That's cool. And I've only gone to a shooting range once. I thought it was pretty fun, but it just sounds like such a cool event that tests all areas of fitness and then shooting, which I think is a very, very awesome skill to have. And not just like, it's a variety of guns too. Like you just said, like long range. So I assume like more of a rifle. And then what's your like background with guns?
So I grew up, like I said, in Vermont, just a very rural town. Me and my brother grew up on the side of a mountain, and we had nobody around. So we grew up with like 22s and some handguns and shotguns, and we just like sitting in the basement, and we would just go like shoot them off the front porch, right? We'd go set up some beer cans down in the yard, and we like did that since we were, I don't know, 5 years old. So we grew up around guns, but I had never been to a shooting range until I started training for this. And then also actually, it's probably something, me and Ryan, I don't think we'd mentioned it in any podcast or anything before, but we used to play competitive paintball. So like really like high level pro speedball, they call it. And it's a very tactical sport where it's all about angles and shooting and communication and teamwork. Which is, I mean, does shooting a paintball gun really translate to shooting, you know, a rifle or pistol? Yes and no, but we still spent, you know, hours and hours, thousands of hours with of a gun in our hands and just training that sort of hand-eye coordination, it doesn't translate directly, but it's a good base to build from.
Yeah,
You know,
definitely.
so yeah, that was basically our background, was like shooting shotguns and 22s in the backyard, and paintball. And now that I'm starting to train like someone who would train for competitive shooting, as training, I'm finding there's a lot more to it than
Yeah.
I used to think. Especially with the pistol, the rifle, because I shot a paintball gun for so long, like it's a very natural feel, that long gun, because you hold it the same, right? You sight it the same, more or less, and you have like those 10,000 repetitions in. With a pistol shooting is just such a different animal, not to mention trying to do it when you're out of breath.
Yeah.
Because if you can listen to like a million YouTube videos on how to shoot a pistol, go to a million firearm course instructions, and the idea is you're coordinating your breathing. So you're shooting either, while you're at the bottom of breath when you're holding your breath, or on a slow exhale, and you're holding that pistol completely steady. But when you're in the middle of a workout and you're out of breath and you're going like this, like not only does your breath really affect it, but you physically can't hold like that. If you imagine like you think of your sights trying to hold on a target, like rather than like being held nice and steady, and if you were calm, it would oscillate like this, right, with your breath.
Yeah.
When you're in the middle of workout like that, it's going like all over like this, and you're almost timing. You're like, okay, it's about to cross the target right now, and then you pull the trigger, and it's a totally different type of animal. And I haven't been able to find any resources anywhere that really teach that type of shooting, right? Because even if you go to like a self-defense type course where someone's teaching you how to shoot, like shoot a pistol at someone who's running at you or attacking you, that's not an accurate shot. You're talking about pulling the trigger when this person's like 5 feet away, right? So it's like, as long as it's pointed in the right direction and you're cocked and the safety's off, like you've succeeded.
Yeah.
Now we're talking about in that same type of, high stress scenario, making a shot with a pistol at maybe 30 yards on, a small piece of computer paper. It's a very difficult thing to do. And it's been a lot of fun to try to acquire that skill.
I think that's what makes it so interesting, right? And all the other little things that can go wrong. I think it was, I don't remember what wrong, but didn't you have some sort of like snafu that happened with one of the guns that you were using? Go into that little bit.
I've had a major malfunction in all 3 of the events I've done so far. One of them, I blew the gas block off of the front of my rifle in the middle of a workout, which is, the gas block is basically, if you imagine the way a gun works, is you shoot, and the striker, right, the firing pin hits the back of the bullet, it creates a combustion, the bullet goes out, and then it takes some of that combustion and recycles it to recock the bolt, right? That's what makes it a semi-automatic rifle, so that you don't have to physically cock it every time. It uses the blowback to recock it. Well, that blowback block, they call it a gas block, I had I installed an aftermarket one on that's adjustable. It allows you to make the rifle shoot a little bit flatter, right? So not so much kick. And I improperly tightened the set screws on it. And in the middle of the workout, this gas block literally blew off. And I realized, because I was firing, and as I would fire, it literally would blow my grip hand off the rifle, because it's the that blowback air was literally coming into my hand rather than being refocused on this gas block. So fortunately, I knew how to make the rifle still fire, which is it's all part of this game. It's like, how do you can maintain and service your equipment. So I had to recock it I had 45 shots left. Every single time I had to recock it and reset. So that lost me a lot of time. I've had other types of really bad rifle jams, pistol jams. And I'm a mechanical engineer, right? So I love the fact that your equipment plays such a big role in this event. And you have to make sure it's maintained. You have to make sure you have the right type of equipment select out that's going to be durable and can handle this type of, it's just like picking the right pair of shoes before a race, right? Like that could make or break your race. But that's really maybe Tahoe, where you have like cold weather, and like picking the right, material shirt or whether you go shorts or leggings or gloves, like that can kind of affect your race. Like imagine that times 10 at every single event.
Yeah.
Right. And I love that. And it's coming from someone who's I've got knocked off the podium multiple times so far because of equipment failures. But it just makes you, next time you go around, you have to be that much more on top of it and make sure you're on top of your shit.
Yeah, it's a learning process, right? Like it's not
Mhm.
really failure. It's just like you learn from
Yeah.
that and like, okay, I'm gonna make sure I screw those tight next time. And
Yeah.
I just
And
think it's
I
really,
don't,
really cool.
yeah. And I don't want to sound like intimidating to anybody who like is
Yeah.
thinking about maybe getting this, because you can take a stock mil spec AR-15, which is the rifle that you shoot, and a completely stock pistol, Glock, whatever. You can use anything that's basically 9mm or 45 ACP. It really they're very specific about what loads you can shoot.
Okay.
Other than that, like you can take completely stock weapons and do totally fine at the event.
Potentially stupid question on that. Do you have to bring your own guns, or do they have some stock ones that you can choose from?
As of right now, you have to bring all of your own equipment.
Okay.
It's something that I've been talking with some of the race directors a bunch about how that would be a really good segue for a lot of people, or way introduction for a lot of
One less
people.
barrier to entry. Yeah.
Exactly. You could have just maybe a more expensive sign up, and they have firearms on site that they teach you. Maybe you go through a little course, teach you how to use it safely before, and then can use that during the event, because it is tough to have especially right now with everything kind of going on.
Yes.
It's difficult to even buy the right. I mean, I bought my setups right before the world got crazy in the last year. And I don't think I would be able to buy them right now, to be honest with you, just with like low inventory of everything.
That's got to be kind of like a scary variable with the sport too, like with all that going on. Like
it is, but to be completely honest, I think people underestimate the support behind the gun industry and the shooting world. Like, I think some people think that's just like a couple rednecks down in like Alabama who are like, hey, you ain't taking our guns. But it's like, I mean, the NRA has, I think like, I want to say it's like 10 million members or something like that. It's a lot. And there are 390 million legal firearms in this country. That's more than one per person.
Yeah.
So like, if you actually pull the stats up on it, you'd be surprised at how many people are gonna be very anti any kind of regulation on that kind of stuff. And it's I try not to get too political with anything, but like our country was founded on on basically having the freedom to keep our government in check by being able to legally own firearms. And a lot of people make the argument that the UK has done, decreased their crime rates and whatnot, and then whatever European country you want to put out. But like at the end of the day, we're not other countries. It's America, and we have a lot of flaws, and we're trying to work them out. But it's a fantastic country, and nobody else in the world has the ability to keep our government in check like we do. So I think it's a really good thing. But
no, I agree. I think both sides can definitely come to the conclusion that we need just gun safety, education, awareness. The more you know about something, the more you know about something, the less you're going to be afraid of it, right?
Yeah.
So, and that goes for everything. I mean, I work with like autistic children. I was just writing up a paper on like how like oh, they're aggressive. Like no, take the time, learn about them, and then it's less. And guns is the same thing. Like, can they kill people? Yeah, absolutely. But just learn how to properly maintain them, store them safely. Don't be stupid.
Let's address the root problem of why there's mass shootings going on. It's because there's too many people who are out there without help, right? That are unstable for reasons that are who knows why, but like, let's get those people help first,
Yeah. But moving on from that, I saw that you took third place in Texas.
Yeah, so that was my first podium that I hit. Congrats. So far, and it was a dogfight. It came right down to the last the eighth event of the weekend. There was like three of us who were right on the cusp of like, are we going to come in second, third, fourth, fifth? We didn't know.
Yeah.
And I tried to, my theme of that whole weekend was to slow down my workouts. So like, take 10% off of that and then really focus on trying to make my shots. And I did that especially well at that last event. And I basically, I tied for first at that event and it ended up keeping me on the podium. But that's been something that's been really tricky for me because we're trained in OCR, and especially with the more like the strength events that I've been doing, like this TMX, High Rocks, you name it, is like you push yourself to that absolute red line where you save a little bit in the tank just for whatever's coming next. But you're not saving enough in the tank to be able to stop and calm yourself and make, accurate sniper shots in the middle of a workout, right? So it's tough to find that balance where you push as hard as you can without crossing that line so that you can still come back. But then there's other points in the workout where you can really let go, where you're like, all right, I know that my next round of shooting is easy. I know I should be able to make 100% of the shots, so I'm going to push harder here. Or I might be done with shooting, right? So like that one workout I was describing where you had to make a bunch of long range shots and then you basically put your rifle down and it's just a workout for the next 20 minutes. So that's when you're like, okay, like here's my jam, gas pedal, let's go. There's no more shooting until the next workout in 2 hours.
I think it's also interesting too, and I don't think I realized this before, but how much of almost like it's a whole weekend event. So how do you treat like recovery throughout the events?
That's hard. The only event I've done that's like this was the TMX championships down in Virginia. It was 3 events in a day, right? So, and they were spaced out by, let's say 2 hours each. And that was exhausting because it's not only physically you're doing 3 different events, right? Which are the TMX is about 15 minutes. And most of these workouts are about 15 minutes, but also it's the mental stress of preparing, preparing and down regulating after every single event. You can't keep your adrenaline at max level for 8 hours, especially now go 2 days with it. It's tough. And fueling, you obviously, you're out in the sun from 6 or whenever the sun, 7:30 a.m. to basically sundown is when the last workout ends. So you're out in the sun all day. You're mentally preparing for the next event. You're like, okay, they give you a loadout, which tells you how many rounds you have to put in each magazine. They're very specific about that. It's like, I got to get that right. I got to study the course map or this next workout to know exactly what order I have to do everything in. So you're mentally getting fatigued and then you're physically getting fatigued, and you have to try to guess like, okay, I think in between this workout and this workout is going to be my biggest break. So I'm going to try to eat, all my calories or the majority of my calories during then so that I have some energy for 3 workouts later down the road. Right. It's a dance, and I love all of it, just because of how much a challenge it is. And it really is. There's so many translations to the obstacle racing world. I love it.
Yeah. Speaking of a comparison with OCR, is there like a Ryan Atkins of the tactical games? Is there like someone out there that's just super dominant that people are just trying to take down as like a target on his back? Or
Totally. And given you got to understand that where the tactical games is right now is exactly where Spartan Race was probably like 6-7 years ago. Okay. So when it was just coming from in its infancy and just starting to develop those superstars. Kind of, right? And it was just becoming a legitimate athletic event, right? It was before, it's always been legitimate, but now you're starting to get people who are actual real, establish themselves as real, I don't want to say professional athletes, but like elite athletes in the event. And I would say right now that there's 2 guys, the top ones to beat are Jared Halpert, and he actually is now the owner of the tactical games. So there's a little bit of a little gray area there.
Conflict of interest.
Conflict of interest. Yeah. So he won 2 national championships, the last 2, or I guess the only 2 they've had.
Oh, wow.
And after this last one, he worked out some kind of a deal and ended up buying the event. And he's only going to compete I think he's going to be in Utah in May, and then he's going to be at the national championship. He's going to come compete in. But other than that, he's just running things. And this other guy, Antone, and they are pretty they're top dogs neck and neck. They're extremely good shooters. Jared comes from a 3-gun background, which is If you know anything about competitive shooting, I'm just learning this myself.
Yeah, no.
It's sort of like timed, really fast-paced shooting, where you'll have to go through a course and you'll shoot your long gun at some targets, you'll drop that, you'll shoot your pistol at some targets, you'll drop that, and then you'll shoot your shotgun at some targets. And this is the kind of
Okay.
stuff where they're literally like, have you ever seen someone like speed load a shotgun?
Yes, yeah, I
And
know.
it's extremely impressive. And they'll load in, like, I don't know, 10 rounds in a shotgun in like 2 seconds, and then like rattle off a bunch of other shots. And we're talking like milliseconds matter to these
They
people.
make it look
So
super easy, yeah.
super easy. So a lot of these guys come from that background. So they're just like super, super proficient. The shooting is like just totally robotic, automatic for them. But they're also they're very fit guys. I mean, Jared's a strong guy. If you put him in any CrossFit gym, he's going to be one of the fittest guys in there. I don't know. I haven't been super impressed with any of their endurance so far. A couple guys, but that's an unfair comparison. We're coming from a sport where we're top level endurance. People are starting to realize that OCR athletes are going to go into about any endurance event. Even, I'm on the by far the slower end, but I can jump into most endurance events and be right up on the podium anywhere. So I'd say those are the two top dogs, but there's a number of other names of guys who have just been like really consistently on the podium. This guy Sal Hernandez, he's a SWAT guy down in San Antonio, Texas. He's actually probably got the best endurance of anybody else out in the field. I'm only in a 5K, I'm beating him by like a minute, 90 seconds.
Okay.
So not that much, in the running world, that's a lot. But when you
factor in everything else
in context, it's actually like he's moving. There's let's see, we've got this guy they call Thor. He's another SWAT guy out of Indiana. He's like 250 pounds. But he does muscle ups and can run a 5:30 mile.
Wow.
5:30 a mile, not super impressive for your standard OCR athlete, but for Tony's 250 pounds, and can shoot like an animal, like that's a scary, that's a scary competitor. There's a bunch of guys out there who are really, it's getting to a point where guys are full-time training for this, right? That's cool. I don't think nobody's quit their jobs, right? But they're, other than work, this is what they do. They train to stay fit for this. And a lot of,
Sorry, are there any women in the sport too?
Just wondering. Yeah, there's so the female side, so the female shooters are phenomenal.
I can see that, yeah.
And honestly, I've found that there's something innate about women that makes them naturally, I think, better shooters than men are. I don't know if it's a concentration thing, but like I've given ex-girlfriends, like taken them to the range before and let them shoot at targets, and they're like dead on bullseye, like never having touched a gun before in their lives. And they're just like, they have a knack for it, right? So the women are absolutely spectacular shooters, but it kind of suffers from the same thing that OCR is suffering from right now. It's just not a big depth of field.
Okay.
In the men's elite category, you might have 50 guys signing up for an event. So you got a couple hundred people over there for the weekend. Most of them are intermediate, masters, whatever. And then you've got 50 guys in the competitive elite category. Every one of them should be there. They're physically qualified. They're good enough shooters. And the women's field might have 10, sometimes I've seen as low as 5. And it's just, I think there's more intimidation maybe for women. And there's probably, there's a lot of female shooters out there. But I think just this combination of shooting and being really physical fit is just very intimidating. And like, hopefully they can find, I know Jared, the owner, is trying to find a way to break down that barrier and make it more accessible. Cause that's, from a business standpoint, you're missing out on 50% of your profits if you don't have women signing up, know, but they're there and they're pretty badass. I'll tell you that. Like shooting way better than me out there, make me look silly. So
that's pretty cool. And how's the camaraderie? So I know you're not, it's different from a race. You're not like suffering together, but how's the sportsmanship and
It's
everything there.
it's honestly it's on another level,
Cool. Cool.
which I was kind of surprised about. Like I said, these guys, this isn't like a fun, like, mud run weekend. Like these guys are sacrificing, time with their kids and their family to train for this thing. And so they're out there for blood, like they're out there to win. But I mean, a good example, I was talking about how down in Texas, it came down to that last event where there was me and a couple other guys who were vying for that one last spot on the podium. There was this guy, Brad Holbrook, who I had my magazines that I had were only 10 round capacity magazines. Mm-hmm. And the workout required that those magazines be 12 rounds. So I could have, I kind of cheated it by adding an extra magazine with those 2 extra rounds for each of them, but it meant that I would have to change magazines more, which just makes it like, it's just a disadvantage for me is all it is. Yeah. And the way the workout was structured was, at the time I would have had to make that extra change, I had this heavy sandbag that I had to have on my shoulder while I made these shots. Wow. So if you can imagine trying to make that, I mean, we're talking, very heavy sandbag, trying to make that transition and load, like, it's just setting yourself up for failure. So this guy, Brad, was like, hey man, like, you don't want to do that. He was one of the guys I'm competing against. He gave me his magazines, right, to use for this workout. We happen to have the same pistol. He's like, no, dude, I don't want you to like lose this thing because you got the wrong magazine, right? And I end up doing really well. This poor guy goes right after me, and he got all his magazines back. He had everything, but he screwed up the sequence of the workout and totally got knocked off the podium for it. And what I was getting at was basically just like, this guy was willing to, like, go above and beyond to help me out in this workout, even though it had him sacrificing his own focus for it.
That's a sign of a good athlete. You want to beat people at their best. Yeah, exactly.
And I mean, not only that, but I've had, like, I mean, I can't even count how many guys have invited me to come out and train at their ranges down in Texas or Indiana, wherever it is. Everybody's been super welcoming. When we set up in the parking lot for, in the morning of, because you're kind of like almost like a tailgate area, right, where you set up your little tent city and everything. Everybody groups around each other. We're all sharing tents and, our coolers and food and everything. Like it's super, super. And I think a lot of it comes from the fact that these guys a lot of them are like high level military operators that work on team. We're talking about special forces guys who work on teams for a living. I'd say the highest demographic of guys who are really competitive are SWAT guys. And that's the same way. They all work in teams, right? That's like cool. A very, team group focused event. So they're used to being not being on their own, right? And I think the reason why there's so many SWAT guys who are good at this is because, one, I'm finding out these guys have like 2 hours a day, some of them designated to training. Like firefighters have like a gym and they have time like to train. Well, like for some of these SWAT guys, it's like mandatory. They're like 2 hours in the gym every day, and they're training to. I mean, you see all these videos about police violence and whatnot, and like a lot of it comes from people not being physically prepared to do their job, right? Yes. And so these guys train hard. I mean, like train hard to the point where like they almost make us look bad, right? Like every day, so that they're physically prepared, so they don't have to pull their weapon, right? So that they can handle whatever they need to physically, which is, I mean, that's awesome, but it also is like makes these guys animals. And to try to compete against them, guys who their work pays them to train 2 hours a day, and they also have unlimited ammo, right? They have shooting ranges at their facilities. It's like you're almost fighting a losing battle. It's like, how do you compete with that? Fortunately, I've been conditioning myself for this sort of event for years, and I've developed a racing mentality and a kind of a ferociousness with that I've been able to hang, not do as well as I want to. I want to win this thing, but it's enough for now.
Yeah. Is it a spectator friendly event? How does
it actually is it's pretty spectator friendly. Like if you
Okay.
go there, as of right now, nobody really comes other than, wives, girlfriends, family, whatever, but
Yeah.
you can see everything. There's maybe one workout per weekend where you'll disappear and you'll only see the start and the finish of. Everything else, you can stand right there and watch talking 30 feet away and watch the whole thing. It's cool.
I would love to cover an event sometime, like just go and just see what it's really like too. I don't know,
Yeah.
sometime in the future. Do they have any events in the Northeast? I know like the South obviously would be like bread and butter to have events like that.
So they used to have an event in Pennsylvania that they're not having this year because of some, I think like the owner of the range is like trying to do his own event. But then they do have an event in New Hampshire in May, mid-May, which actually I won't be able to make. I've got actually that's something else we should talk about too, is the Hildervat race. I don't know if you've heard about that.
Oh yes,
we
had them on recently.
It's going on, and Dan Woods I'm sure that's who you interviewed. He's asked me to help him build an obstacle for that event, like a Kempson design signature obstacle to be to kind of come into play there for that. And I'm super stoked about that event because it's honestly, with all these other races getting canceled, that's going to be hands down the most competitive, deepest field of all the top guys on the year so far. And it might not be field might not be matched until like World Championship season.
I was thinking that,
so that'll be, and that's going off in a little over a month. And that's going to be like the really the primo event. It's cool that he made that happen with, I believe he's teaming up with Riverbend CBD. And they're together. They're the ones who are flying in all these big names. I think they got, for the men's side, it's like, so it's Kempson, Killian, Atkins, Newell, who else they have coming there? Woodsy, VJ, I believe.
Yes, that's not. Yep.
VJ, and that's the 6 right there, I think.
6. Yep. And for the women, we got Rebecca,
Nicole,
Lindsay, Faye Stenning, I think.
Alex Walker.
Ooh,
am I right about that?
I'm not. We're gonna get someone wrong. I'm gonna feel bad.
I know. I'm just thinking of girls who have been kicking ass lately.
Yeah.
But either way, it's going to be hands down the deepest, most competitive field. And the way they're structuring the event, I probably shouldn't get this too much. I'm sure you just talked about this in the other podcast, but it's like it's qualifying round. So you run it against these guys, and if you make it, you move on, and it gets more and more competitive. And the prize money like ramps up. So like if you make it first qualifying round, you get like X amount of dollars, and by the end of it, it's like they're big payouts. I think winners taking home over 10 grand.
That's awesome. It's a lot of money.
At the end of the day, it's a lot of money. It'd be the biggest payout other than a national, championship, which we got to wait another 7-8 months for.
Long time for, yeah.
And it's going to be spectator friendly. I've been working with him to make sure the course is laid out such that, and it's right on the beach in Jacksonville. I mean, there's a hotel like you can see the whole race from your hotel room. It's pretty freaking cool. And it's set up for it's like a multi-loop race so that you can stand in the middle and watch almost the entire thing. There's like one bucket loop that's going to go out for like maybe a quarter mile, but other than that, like everything's gonna be like bam in your face right there.
Yeah, I think that's a good transition to talk more about Kempson designs too. I think the last time I had you on, you were producing a lot of like high quality pull-up bars. I think you said you were also working on a unique OCR sled. Has there been any update with that too, or?
Yeah, I kind of put that on the back burner just with everything going on. I wasn't ready to just go into production mode, especially with making the move across the country. But I have sort of been ramping things up with doing designs for people. So we're doing the Hildervat event in May 22nd, and then the next one we have lined up after that is OCR WC. I'm going to be doing the 100 meter, and I think that's going to be. We haven't come to a totally final deal on it, but I think I'm going to do the whole course, right? So from start to finish, the OCR WC 100 meter event, and I've got plans to make this thing really bang quick, like total flow. No, you're not gonna get hung up anywhere. People are gonna have to make some really big athletic moves to get through it. So I'm really stoked about that one, and I'm sure we'll probably need to chat again when that gets closer.
I'm really happy to hear about that. I know Dave Claxton wrote in and he wanted to know specifically about that course because
Mm,
I think everyone that was there at NORAM that got to see the underdog really
mm,
appreciated that because you have someone like me that's just getting
mhm.
my my ass across that any way I could.
So,
And then you
so
have,
the
you know, amazing athletes like Aaron Newell that just it's high risk, high reward. I thought that was a brilliant,
yeah.
simple obstacle if you look at it, but there's more to it than you would initially see, I think.
And we're going to take that same thing. Actually, I'm probably going to split up underdog and turn it into 2 rigs
Okay.
for that event. Same kind of idea where like if you're athletic enough to make the move, like you're getting through it like that. Combined with I like to take like a lot of other standard sort of military O course obstacles. Nothing fancy, but stuff that just you can move through fast if you know what you're doing. And the whole thing, it's going to come down to milliseconds, right? Like
Yeah.
I want that final heat. I don't want it to be decided halfway through, right? Like I want you
Yeah.
to, I'm going to do whatever it takes to. There might be some sort of kind of very subtle strength elements in there that are just enough to, if someone breaks away on the run, they're going to get slowed up on this, so to really keep it, basically photo finish, which
Yeah.
might actually hurt me because that's going to be really tough, even with chip timing, right? It's one person says his hand crossed first, the other, like it's going to be we got to find a way to really make that a bulletproof, so because there's money on the line for that, and people are going to be flying across the country, people are flying across the world to come do that event, so you got to make sure that you got all your ducks in a row. And when someone challenges, I mean, how many times have we had over like the last years something come into whether it's Woodsy touching a truss or Hunter kicking a bell, like it's you gotta have your shit tight, not like Spartan races handled some of that stuff in the past with doing photo evidence review because someone posted an Instagram story 2 hours later.
Tell me about it.
Come on.
And I think that event specifically shows the maturation of the sport too, showing that athletes are specifically, you have like VJ who's like, I'm not there for like beasts yet, I'm going to focus on this. And then you have Leon, unfortunately, just got really hurt. But
I heard about that.
Oh. Crushed. I listened to him on ORM and my heart fucking broke for this guy because he's just a ball of positivity. And he's like, I don't know if I can run again.
Well, so my brother just literally texted me a picture of an X-ray. Yeah, so he heard him. He said he had this death scream. He just on like Sunday afternoon texted me an X-ray of a kneecap that's basically like split in half, right? And or was it the tibia?
It was I don't know. It looked bad.
Whatever it was
a kneecap too, though. Yeah,
it was a fracture. It was like, I mean, you could see it clear as day on that X-ray. Like the thing is cracked, and he didn't tell me who it was. I thought it was him. I was like, oh my God, what did you do? Yeah, I'm like, what did you do? And I'm like, my heart dropped. And then he said it was Leon, and I'm like, I obviously am glad it wasn't my brother, but I still, the fact that Cat had to get on an 18-hour flight that night.
Can you imagine?
No. Oh, I was sick to my stomach for the rest of the day thinking about this poor freaking kid having to get on a plane.
Yeah.
I just could not, like, there is no painkiller strong enough in the world to keep you comfortable on a plane for 18 hours with a broken kneecap.
He said the only thing that kind of kept him going mentally was like, all right, I'm 1 hour closer to home. I'm 1 more hour closer to home. But the whole fucking time, this poor guy, like, he just wanted to come to the US, race some of the best athletes in the world because most of them are here. And his third race, he got really badly hurt. And I've just become a huge fan of him. He's very vocal about like his struggles, like when his mom was undergoing cancer and all this stuff. But he's just an awesome guy. And I don't want anyone injured, but it just, it sucks.
I know. It's a shame. You hate to see that to anybody, There's trust me, there's been guys I'm competing against where like if they rolled their ankle right in front of me, I'm not going to lose sleep about it.
I can think of one person,
yeah, but you, right. But you never want someone to get hurt like that, regardless of competing against them or not.
Exactly. I don't have a good transition away from this, but I also wanted to talk about something that you've been pretty vocal about, the power belly. Tell me because when I hear power belly, I think of something to describe what power belly means to you.
I mean, I've always carried like a higher body fat percentage than I mean, my brother, obviously, or that for a lot of endurance athletes, just like how I've always been. Like I'm pretty darn clean with my diet. Although I don't restrict, I try to eat more calories and less, if anything. And a lot of that's because the events that I'm trying to do for the most part require more strength. But so like I've always, I don't know, just had like, since I was little, I had like, they used to call it a Buddha belly. My mom would say I had Buddha belly, and I think some of it's just like your anatomy, right? Some people have lungs that are low, whatever. So I just would always joke about it, that it's the power belly. It's where you pull all of your strength from, and it's all your magical powers come from the power belly. And some of my favorite athletes got little power bellies too. So yeah, I don't know. And then it's honestly like it's definitely got accentuated over the last years. I mean, I put on like 15 pounds this year already since Christmas. I've put on a lot of weight, and I'm running well, which is like surprising given if I try to climb up a mountain, right? If I try to do anything vertical, it's like, forget about it. I'm half as slow as I used to be, but on flat ground, I'm PRing some of my distances, and I'm running. I feel very strong when I'm running, and my endurance is good up to about an hour. Right. I mean, I don't do too much that's longer than an hour because I just don't need it for what I do. Yeah. But I mean, I'm hoping we got High Rocks coming up next weekend.
Yeah.
So my main focus this year has been tactical games. I'm trying not to let anything get in the way of that, because I mean, we all know where we're at in this world of fitness and OCR, like you gotta pick one thing and be good at it. If you try to be good at everything, you're gonna be good at nothing. So I'm trying to stay focused on tactical games, but I got the invite for the High Rocks Invitational event next weekend. And it's a great opportunity to race against some people that I love racing against, and to, show that I not only am I doing this tactical game stuff, but I can still come back and kick some ass in the OCR world. So we'll see how that goes. It's going to be, I mean, it's going to be stacked. We got Hunter. Will be there. I mean, that is just he's so predisposed to win that event. It's not even funny.
It's made for him. It's made for Hunter.
It is. Yeah. And I hate saying that about anything, but it's just like a 24-hour course is made for Ryan Atkins. Like the guys have put so much, it's like, good luck is all I can say for that. But then we've got Lucas Storath, who was the original world championship of High Rocks out of Germany. He'll be coming over. This other guy, Alex, and he's got some sort of Russian last name, is going to be out there. He's like your number 2 guy from Germany. We've got Killian's supposed to be there. Atkins was supposed to come, but I think like low key, I don't think he's going to be able to make it down Canada, from with the border cross. Like he's got to have a real good excuse, because I think they got to pay like $2,000 for like a hotel when they come back over and quarantine for a week. It's absurd, but and he's frustrated with it. But we'll have David Magitas. He's debuting for his first High Rocks event.
Yes.
Even though it's his first one, and I think he's going to get his teeth kicked in a little bit for sure. Too. Like it's going to be not quite what he's expecting, but he's an extremely strong runner, and he carries a lot of mass.
Yeah.
Why Hunter's good. So I think David will do very well. Like I said, I think he's going to be surprised, but I think he'll still do well. And then we've got you there?
Yeah, your audio sounds a little different. I don't know if your headphones unplugged or died. Okay. I can't hear. You're good now.
Oh wait, no. Okay.
Testing. There we go.
And then who else we got coming down? Grant McCartney, who's the Island Ninja. These are sort of more like, we've got a couple celebrity appearances in there, which I get they got to do for promotional purposes. Yeah. But Grant McCartney came out to TMX. He was at the championships down in.
He qualified just like like everybody else, and he did well.
Lost you again.
All right, I'm turning these right off.
Sorry.
All right, we're going no headphones. All right, so yeah, Grant McCartney, he's a serious athlete. I mean, he's always had a good, strong, I think like a swing background, so he's got good endurance, and he's put on a lot of strength. I think he'll do fine.
Did you watch him on Spartan Games? Because he did pretty well holding up his.
Yeah. They, people realize that when they come into the OCR world, they're gonna, like, if they're not prepared, they're gonna get their asses whooped. So he's been training up, And I feel like we got one more guy who's coming in there. No, I don't think Isaiah is going to be able to make it. Who knows where he is these
I
days?
heard mixed things about that, but he did show up for San Antonio. I think he
He
showed
showed
up for that Spartan. Yeah.
I think he got beat out by Vic Quezada at the last minute. But Vic is, people underestimate how good of an athlete Vic is,
I had him
especially
on recently. Yeah.
on his home turf in Texas. And look at his record. I mean, if I don't know, you got to get like Jack Bauer to pull up stats on Vic down in Texas. Not a lot of guys have beat him down there, and I don't think people don't realize that. So, but yeah, so that's going to be a stacked field, and that event is, I mean, High Rocks. I think we might have chatted. No, we talked before. Yeah, we probably chatted about it.
A
but
little
it's
bit,
like,
yeah.
Man, that event is just I don't want to say like sufferfest because that's the kind of an overused term, but it's like
100 wall balls at the end. Fuck that.
Is absurd. So like in a beast course or an ultra beast course or ultra world championship, like your intensity, you're going hard, but like maybe at the very end, if you've got like in the world championship where Albin had to fight off Atkins 2 years back, right? And like Atkins ran really hard for 5 minutes down that hill at the end of the event. But we're talking doing that for that sort of intensity for an hour sustained, which is a long time. And it changes up just enough. Like you couldn't sustain that intensity with just running or just rowing or just workouts. But when you change up every 4 minutes, you kind of can. And because you're changing energy systems enough. And it's like, I mean, you get like 20 minutes into the thing and you're like, fuck me. Like I have to do this for another 40 minutes at that intensity. And then you said finish with 100 wall balls. 100 wall balls is not, for someone who does that kind of workouts, is not a extreme task.
Sounds like hell to me.
But to do it as like that's your finish, like that's potentially, and it's how Isaiah beat me at the last one, right? He came in, he broken through 100 of them, and we're like, you're wrecking your quads in, I mean, was it 100 meters of sandbag lunges, 8 meters of burpee broad jumps? Like these are things that demolish quads.
Yeah.
And doing the wall ball after that, you're just like, it's you just go into another dimension when you get to that point.
It sounds brutal, and that's where I kind of look at DecaFit, and I think Spartan has a lot to go with that kind of knockoff event, but at least it's something that I think I could do. I don't know if I could get my ass through a High Rocks with the sled push. That's something you can either do it or you can't. And I was watching Corinna struggle with that, and I'm like, she's incredible. She's struggling with the women's one, but I think there's like a shoe and all that.
There's a technique to it. Some people think it's the shoes, which there might be some truth to that, but I've found from doing a lot of different sled pushes on different surfaces, there's a technique, and it's very counterintuitive because you think, especially like
up.
Yeah. So from my engineering mind, you think like, okay, you want to get as flat of a back as possible, as much of like an angle on that, right? So you want to be almost like as parallel to the ground, like prowler position as possible.
Yeah.
But the more you decrease that angle, the more you lose like surface on your shoe, right? Like surface area on your shoe, because you could start getting more up on your toes. And then it also, there's something about the weight distribution on the sled that doesn't want to be pushed. The pushing force doesn't want to be parallel to the ground. It actually wants up, because what it does is it lifts the back feet. And I mean, I understand a lot about physics and I can't figure out why. But
yeah.
So like, for example, if this chair is a sled, right? Like arm extended pushing forward, you actually I round my back and I pull up like this as I'm pushing forward. And for some reason, it makes the sled go. And I found that technique out because I watched, I think it was like 2017 CrossFit Games had a team sled push event where you like alternated guys like pushing a really heavy sled across a turf field. So same type of sled, same type of turf. And the guys who got this really low prowler position couldn't budge the sled. And the guys who stood up more, rounded their back and like pulled up on the sled were able to push it, and it works. Can't tell you why, but it works.
I'm not a big football guy, so I might be out of place saying this, but it almost makes me think of like when I was a defensive end, like you want to get low and like push up high, almost like those pushing sleds and stuff like that. So I guess I could see how that makes sense. I don't know why, but yeah.
I mean, it doesn't make sense to actually get there and you're in the middle of the event and you're like, I flew all the way down here and I'm about to not make it past this and not be able to finish the race because I can't move this freaking sled. You just figure out what works, you know?
So other than the wall balls, what's a station there that you see that you're dreading? Is there something there that you despise, or you just kind of used to it all?
So the hardest, I'd say the make or break and the most difficult thing in the entire race is to finish that sled push and run.
Yeah.
And not be god awfully slow. It's the hardest thing to do because your legs, it's pushing a sled it's an entirely
Full body
concentric motion. Full body too, but so it's like walking upstairs. You're never like with a squat, you go down and you go up. It's like eccentric, concentric, eccentric, concentric. Okay. With a sled push, it's concentric, 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 concentric. It's the same. You don't get that relief, right? You're not transitioning. You're using the same type of, so that's muscle length or muscle shortening. It's all muscle shortening. There's no muscle lengthening, which is extremely fatiguing. And to try to run after that, it's almost impossible. Yeah. Like your legs feel like it is lactic acid, but it's more than that. It's also muscle fatigue. And it's a lot. So that's by far the most difficult thing I think to do. But also the pull, the pull is probably the most physically demanding, I want to say, because it's so about 325 pounds, 350 pounds, the sled with the weight of the sled. Right. And then you've got this 50 or 25 meter rope that has stretch to it, right? It's right. So you go to pull, and when that sled's out at 25 meters, you pull and the sled doesn't move. You're just stretching the rope, right? So you're like, for every foot of pull you get like 2 inches of sled movement. So you're putting in a lot. It's super annoying. And as it gets closer, that rope shortens, so your stretch gets less, and then it gets easier to pull. But at the beginning, it's extremely difficult to pull. And that's you start getting bicep, back, quad, like inner, especially gets your inner quads for some reason a lot with that. And that's really difficult. And then, but basically once you finish that, it's like, you're kind of cruising. Yeah. Like I put that in quotation marks because it's not really cruising, but like all the other movements after that are more body weight-y kind of. They're not quite as like massively taxing, but the whole thing's freaking hard. Honestly, there's no, like, the easiest part is the farmer's carry. You see the farmer's carry and you're like, all right, that's gonna be my break, but it's still 140 pounds for 200 yards. Yeah, you know, it's a lot still.
That's nuts. So we're going to transition to a couple of the more random questions before we wrap up. So I wanted to ask about this because we covered it in short news, but I don't know if you're still doing it. Morning Wood Radio, is that a thing that you're still doing with?
Morning Wood Radio is actually starting to pick up.
All right.
We started doing it just as a joke. So we had nothing better to do during quarantine back in Colorado, and we would just dress up in ridiculous outfits, go out in the backyard, and have our buddy Nick O'Sullivan would film us, and we were like making a show, and we got like 2 episodes in, and then like, I don't know, quarantine got serious or something, and it just like, it fell apart. And we picked it up a couple months ago. We were like, well, let's just do a podcast again, you know, just for fun, really. Like, we both like, I'm a big history buff. I love, like, I'm constantly reading books, listening to podcasts, and Hunter's the same way too. On kind of similar subjects.
Surprisingly, people would think, but yeah, I have heard that.
And so, and we just love, like, when we get together, me and him, we've had our ups and downs, a rocky relationship, and we've learned, you know, where boundaries need to be set, whatnot, blah, blah, blah. But we both, like when we get together, we don't really talk about racing. We never have, right? We train super hard. We train together a lot. Like our conversations are like about, you know, I said like history, girls, guns, you know, crazy stories, you know, drinking nights out on the town, drinking beers and getting in a fight, like whatever. Like they're about life, right? More so than, I mean, racing's a big part of life for sure, but there's more to life than that. So we're like, let's start a show where we just talk about whatever real, you know, just like it, like I think our tagline was fascinating men having fascinating conversations. And that's, I mean, that's very egocentrical to say that we're fascinating people.
Yeah.
But at the very least, we're trying to have interesting conversations about stuff. And we talk about a good amount of like OCR stuff and stuff in our world and people in our world. But we've been coming up with a subject for each one. It's developing as we go along, right?
Yeah.
And because I mean, you got you guys, you got Obstacle Racing Media, you got like was it for OCR? Like there's a lot of podcasts that are covering this stuff already, right? And like you guys, like thank you for having that, so we don't have to talk about it, right? So
yeah.
So we don't go into great detail about that. We'll pick like a subject. I think the one we did on Monday or Tuesday was about frontiersmen, right? Just like totally, like Hunter bought a cabin up in the woods in California. My brother is building a cabin up in New Hampshire. So we're like, let's talk about like, you know, men moving out into the woods and being frontiersmen. And we just like, I've read before, you know, by the time we picked that subject, over the years, I've read so many books about, you know, people moving out west and frontiersmen and trappers and you know, like how Midwest cities like Detroit, and Milwaukee got founded by trappers and whatnot. And so like, I've got this wealth of knowledge that usually the only use for it is like basically like bar talk, right? Like, you know, like having random conversations with people about like, who the fuck really wants to know about like how the city of Detroit was founded and burned to the ground 5 times. Like, I love it. It fascinates me. But this is like an outlet to be able to like talk about these kind of things and like kind of let this information out into the world and be kind of funny with it. So
that sounds kind of cool. I saw, from what I saw, I just saw like a YouTube video. I watched like a few minutes of that. I did enjoy it. Are you guys also on like iTunes and stuff? Like, do you need any help with that? Are you trying to get on that or?
I mean, you are so much more technologically advanced than we are. Like Hunter, I don't even think he does it. He presses a record button, right? So he opens up whatever app, he presses record. We try to keep it 45 minutes or so. And then he sends that over to his production guy who uploads it to YouTube. Okay. And there's no editing, no nothing. I couldn't even begin with I'm the least technologically advanced engineer you'll ever meet. I don't understand any of that crap. I can barely figure out how to work my Amazon Fire TV. So yeah, we just press the button and record and put it on YouTube. And that's like, I mean, we kind of leave it at that. You know, if it picks up, people really start liking to listen to it. Maybe we'll find a way to put it on iTunes or whatever. But for now, that's like, I don't know. We got too much else going on.
Just thought I'd ask. And it's kind of funny how you said that too. Like I'm very good at, like, I can edit a podcast, but I can't do like anything with my hands. Like you can build, and I'd much rather like, if I could build a rig in my back, like I would love that, but I can't do shit with that, but I can edit a mean podcast, you know? So
my printer's been sitting in my closet for the last like 3 months. I can't get that shit hooked up. So.
And then another thing I wanted to talk about, I can't remember if we touched on this last time, but even if we did, I want to talk about it again. I've heard that you're a big fan of Jesse Bruce, right?
Well, yeah.
So why? Like, what is it about him?
I just always have loved competing against him. He's just one of those guys. Like me and my brother said it a few years back. We're like, Jesse's the kind of guy we'd want to bring into battle with us. Like, and I don't know why that is like the qualification for being someone that you like racing against, but like, he's just a guy you get on the start line. You're like, that guy's going to give 100%. He doesn't hate me. You know, he loves me as a competitor and he wants me to do well, but he's also going to he's going to put his freaking life on the line to win this race. And you just, you can look in some people's eyes and just know that right away, like without even having a conversation. He's just like one of those guys that you just, you know, you want to have around, you want to surround yourself with. So I don't know, we've always just loved racing against him.
Yeah, and it's. I mean, have you seen his mini documentary, New Addiction?
Yeah.
Yeah, like that man has gone through hell. He knows what it's like, and I think because of that, he can push harder than most other people. But once he
Oh,
finishes, I mean, he's Adrian Bijanata is one of his favorite athletes too, because he finishes, he's like, all right, where do you need me to volunteer? He's just a
exactly.
good guy, and he has that switch where, and I think most OCR athletes have that. I can think of a few, one particular stadium racer who, anyway, but like to turn
Listen,
that off and just
if Isaiah didn't exist, my life would be less interesting. I'm glad. I always say it's like Batman needing the Joker, right? Like Batman's nothing without the Joker, right? You know, it's a
yep,
necessary. It's out there that someone's got to be the scapegoat. You know, if
yeah.
we weren't all bitching and moaning about Isaiah every 10 seconds, we'd be bitching and moaning about each other. So
Yes. But also just like so everyone has that switch in the sport, but I think his switch is definitely the biggest. Like he goes from like just a mean, like just a fierce competitor, and all you guys are, but then he just super nice. It's just so funny to see that.
love
Yeah,
it.
he's an awesome guy. But yeah, that's just about it. Is anything you want to shout out?
No,
People can follow
other
you and all
than
that.
definitely like get some buzz going around this Hilderbot thing because it's going to be like they're gonna do good media coverage on it. So
Yeah.
you'll definitely watch it, but like it's gonna be freaking exciting. I think it's gonna be the most exciting thing the sport's honestly ever seen, as from like a coverage spectator standpoint. You know, it's got the big names, it's got the court. You know, I'm making sure on the course end of it, everything is appropriate for this type of spectator friendly event. And it's got the prize money, it's got the video coverage. Like it's gonna be what's up.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. Definitely looking forward to hearing more about tactical games. And yeah, thanks so much for coming on, man.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.